You often hear the phrase, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. It sounds nice and motivating, but in reality, that's not quite true. When someone lives paycheck to paycheck and their income barely covers basic expenses, they don't actually have those free hours. In that state, you don't make plans or dream, you simply survive. Go on YouTube or TikTok, and within 10 minutes, you'll be flooded with financial advice. Save 20% of your income, max out your retirement account, surround yourself with successful people, because your network is your net worth. All of it sounds reasonable, but here's the key question. What if your income is only $2,500 a month? Let's do some simple math. Rent $1,200, groceries $500, gas, bills, and other expenses eat up the rest. How are you supposed to save 20%? Sometimes even 2% is impossible to set aside. In those moments, people aren't thinking about retirement savings or financial freedom. They're thinking about how to make it to Friday without falling into more debt. This is the reality for millions, and it's not because they're lazy or irresponsible. The problem is different. The system itself was never built for those starting from zero. Most popular financial advice comes from people who already have starting capital, connections, or at least a safety net. But what about those who have none of that? What if you work full-time, give it everything you've got, and still end up stuck living paycheck to paycheck? When it feels like no matter how hard you try, you're always behind, this video is made for those people. Not for the ones buying their fifth apartment, not for those comparing crypto portfolio returns, but for those who feel trapped and are looking for a real way out. Because even if your income is very low, there are still steps you can take to change your trajectory. This isn't empty theory or trendy slogans. These are 5 proven principles that can help turn your life around. These days, you hear it everywhere. Your network is your net worth. If you want to grow, get into the right rooms, talk to successful people, find mentors. And yes, connections do open doors. But here's the part almost no one mentions. If you show up empty-handed, you won't be invited back. Networking isn't magic, and it's not a secret code. It's always an exchange of value. If you don't yet have skills, projects, or even small results, then what exactly can you offer in return? Imagine you walk into a room full of entrepreneurs and investors. They're discussing ideas, sharing strategies, planning partnerships. You sit down and say, I'm very motivated, and I dream of being mentored. That's not value, that's a request. The biggest illusion beginners have is thinking they absolutely need a contact or a connection to get started. But the truth is, most successful people started without knowing anyone. They began alone, with no applause or support, taking their first steps, failing, launching projects that didn't work out, and only over time did they create something that truly worked. And that's the point when connections became useful, because they had something to offer. They could walk in and say, here's my project, here are my results, let's collaborate. And that completely changed how others saw them. So if you're making $2,500 today and trying to change your life, the most useless thing you can do is spend hours chasing contacts for the sake of having them. It feels important, but in reality, it steals precious time. It's far wiser to invest that time into building your own offer, something that becomes your calling card. What could that be? Almost anything. Writing code, learning design, editing videos, starting a blog or podcast, creating a small service, building a product, even if it's imperfect. Let it be rough, let no one notice it at first. What matters is not how many people are watching, but that you have something real to show. And here's what happens next. When you create something yourself, your inner stance changes. Now, when you meet a successful person, you're not begging, please help me. You're showing, look what I've built, want to talk about it. That's why the core principle is simple. Build first, talk later. Not the other way around. The network that may one day become your capital doesn't care how inspired you are. It cares about what you can offer right now. When your income is small, your budget turns into a real battlefield. Every dollar is like a soldier on the front line. Each one has a role, and every mistake costs too much. If you earn $2,500 a month, even a single careless expense can become critical. That's why life on a low income feels like a constant survival game. You don't have a safety cushion, no room for error, no reserve to save you if something goes wrong. Every wrong decision becomes a risk that directly threatens your stability. But here's the paradox. Most financial struggles don't come from one huge irrational purchase. More often, the root of the problem lies in dozens of small choices that seem harmless on their own. For example, you ordered takeout for $12 because you were too tired to cook. You took a taxi for $18 because you were running late. You forgot to cancel a $30 subscription and it renewed automatically. Individually, none of these seems critical, but together they form a pattern that quietly pulls you down. Let's look at the numbers. Ordering delivery twice a week already adds up to around $100 a month. Add a couple of taxi rides, another $60. Subscriptions and services, another $40. In the end, that's over $200 disappearing without notice. For someone earning $2,500, that's about 8% of the budget. And the worst part? That money isn't pushing you forward. It doesn't become an asset. It doesn't build capital. It doesn't create returns. It's just convenience at a high price. Why is this so dangerous? Because in those moments, you you feel like you're not doing anything wrong. It's not luxury, not a massive purchase, it's just food, transport, or a subscription. But that's exactly the trap. Small expenses don't raise alarms, so no one tracks them. What's the way out? One word: awareness. That doesn't mean turning your life into asceticism and cutting out all joys. It means filtering every expense through the question, does this help me or hold me back? Yes, cooking at home may be boring. Yes, public transport may be slower. Yes, staying in with friends might feel less fun than going out to a bar. But if your income is limited, the only strategy that works is having more discipline than those around you. You don't have to deprive yourself completely, but you do need to eliminate autopilot mode, where money slips away unnoticed. Every dollar either builds your future or quietly steals it. That's why so many people remain stuck for years. It's not just about income level, it's about habits. People get used to comfort and convenience, even when it costs them dearly. But who has the courage to say, I'll choose discomfort today, so tomorrow will be easier? That's a rare skill. And here lies a simple truth. Discipline is the tool that can replace money where there isn't enough of it. You might be losing in terms of income, but you can still win by spending with awareness. Many people stay at the same level for years, not because they love their lives, but because those lives are predictable. Even if a paycheck only barely covers making ends meet, there's a familiar system in it. You know how to stretch $2,500, you know how to juggle bills, you know how to tell yourself next year will be better. It's familiar territory, and therefore it feels safe. But any change, a side job, a new skill, starting a small business, is a step into the unknown. And the unknown is scary. It forces you to leave the familiar, to learn something new, to try things you're not confident in yet. When someone takes their first steps toward change, they're met with a whole set of unpleasant feelings. You have to study something you don't yet understand. You'll need to put yourself out there and risk criticism. Someone might laugh if your project doesn't work out. You might fail in front of others. That's why most people choose to stay where they are. Not because it's ideal, but because it's their comfort zone, even if that comfort is questionable. But here's the key thought. Discomfort is not a sign of mistake. It's a sign you're finally doing something differently. Many assume that if a step toward a new life makes them anxious or awkward, it must mean they're on the wrong track. But in reality, it's the opposite. If it feels awkward, if it's scary, that's the sign of growth. The path to a better life is never smooth or easy. It's uncomfortable, full of doubts, sometimes lonely. And that's normal. You're breaking habits you've followed for years. You're learning to say no where you used to say yes. You're waking up earlier or working longer than you're used to. You're pushing harder even though there's no guarantee of success yet. And this is the moment where most people give up. They try a little, dip a toe in the water, feel the cold, and run back to the warmth of predictability. But this is where the turning point is hidden. Every awkward step today is an advance payment for a calmer tomorrow. Every night spent learning a new skill. Every awkward attempt to call a client. Every video you post that no one notices. All of it is an investment in the future. Over time, these small investments turn into real change. You pay the price of discomfort, and one day the world starts to open up. A moment comes when you don't need motivation anymore because you have momentum. You stop fearing rejection because you're too busy growing. You stop worrying about what others think because you already have results. So if you're afraid to start, that's a good sign, and the best way to handle it is to move forward despite the fear, because pain today is protection against regret tomorrow. When money is tight, a credit card can feel like salvation. The card breaks down, your child gets sick, you're too tired to cook, so you order food. You tell yourself, I'll deal with it next month. But in reality, debt doesn't solve the problem. It only postpones the consequences, and that postponement comes at a cost. If you put $1,000 on a card and only make minimum payments, in a few months that balance grows to $1,200, then $1,600, and soon $2,400. Not because you're buying more, but because interest is working against you. Every month the debt grows on its own, while your salary stays the same. It's like a weed in your wallet. The longer you ignore it, the stronger it grows, draining your energy. And the problem isn't only math. Debt affects your psychology. It weighs on you, steals your confidence, becomes a constant background noise. You stop thinking about growth because all your energy goes into just staying afloat. That's why the first step is simple. If you don't have debt yet, avoid it. If you already do, face it head on. Stop pretending it's manageable. Cut up the card, call the bank, negotiate restructuring, sell something unnecessary, take a side job. The key is not to delay. Debt isn't a tool, it's a trap. But here's another point. Even if you manage expenses perfectly, that's not enough. You can't save your way into prosperity. Yes, saving helps, but without income growth, you'll remain stuck. Rent won't disappear. Bills will always arrive. survive. Prices only rise over time. So the only real way out is increasing your income. That doesn't necessarily mean launching a startup or building a corporation. More often, it starts small: freelancing, side gigs, selling services, offering simple products online or offline. It's not about thousands right away. Even an extra $100 a week matters. That's $5,000 a year, money that can go not to survival but to building your future. The key idea is that your income should stop being a ceiling that defines you. You're not someone who earns $2,500. You're someone who starts at $2,500 and moves upward. Every new skill, every attempt to expand your income, it's a step toward freedom. And finally, the most important habit: pay yourself first. The usual cycle looks like this. You get paid, cover rent, bills, groceries, entertainment, and if something's left, maybe I'll save. But in reality, almost nothing is left. To change that, you have to flip the process. Save first, even if it's just $20. Treat it as strictly as paying for internet or electricity. Only this payment goes not to someone else's company, but to your future. And it's not about the amount, it's about the message to yourself. Those $20 say, I believe in tomorrow more than I fear today's struggles. Over time, this becomes part of your identity. You become someone who saves, and when your income grows, the habit remains. Now, it's not $20, but $100, $300, $1,000. If saving is always postponed until later, that moment never comes, because as income grows, so do desires. That's why the rule is simple. If you can't save $20 from $2,000, you won't save $200 from $5,000. The issue isn't money, it's habit. And here's the truth: building wealth from zero is brutally hard. Not because you're lazy, not because you're bad with money, but because it's a path few are willing to take. It's long, quiet, and invisible, but it's what builds the foundation. You learn to control spending, you eliminate debt, you find ways to increase income, you lock in the habit of saving, and one day, all that work comes together into a system. At some point, your habits begin working for you. Debt disappears, savings appear, skills start paying off, and for the first time, money pulls you forward instead of holding you back. That's when the breakthrough happens. Life doesn't become easy, but you become stronger, and at that moment, everything changes. If this approach resonates with you, hit subscribe and share your story. Comment which principle felt most useful to you, because every dollar you save today is a little employee that will work for you tomorrow and never take a vacation.